Hello, my name is Nick Taselli, and I'm a solutions engineer here at Unleash. Today, we are going to be walking through a demo of the Unleash Enterprise platform. We're going to be able to see some of the features that are improved from our open source to professional to the enterprise plan. Starting out, we're going to head over to our getunleashed.io homepage. This is a great place to see some of the interesting brands that we have the pleasure of working with on a daily basis, as well as some of our customer testimonials, as well as these cards that show our Docker downloads, our GitHub stars, and our monthly active users. We also have received numerous accolades and review companies like G2. So it's a great place to just go ahead and click through and see some of those reviews that our customers are talking about. We also have a blog on our homepage. This is a great place to see some of the industry insights that we receive, on a daily basis, talking to our enterprise customers. We try to bring that back to our entire community because everyone can benefit from some of the implementations and stories that we hear from our customers every single day. We also do accompany each new product release with a blog post. So if you're ever wondering what new features are available in the upgraded version of Unleash, you can always head over to our blog post or our blog page and see what's new in the product. So the homepage is a great place and resource for all things Unleash, and we're going to update this as we go. However, this is a very technical audience that will be watching this video, and you're going to be spending a bunch of time in our documentation. Our documentation does support our entire product suite. So open source, professional, and enterprise users all come to docs.getunleashed.io to learn about the product and see how to implement it. However, with enterprise, you are going to be having access to every single enterprise feature. So you won't be burdened by some of those notes that say, hey, this is only a enterprise grade feature. But together, we're going to start out in our kind of introductory phase and get a high level overview of what Unleash is all about. So starting out here with this image, it's a really great diagram that just shows all the different parts that are working together to create Unleash and, basically provide a resilient system across many different places. And so starting out on the right-hand side of the screen, this is the Unleash API and the Unleash UI. So when it comes to what we're building here at Unleash, we are, focusing a lot of time here on, building a nice modern user interface. However, the most important aspect of our product is that API. It serves the end users and your client applications and your server side and front end apps, but it also is what you would be interacting with when you're, clicking around in the user interface and making changes to the admin API route. So with that said, everything that you do inside the Unleash admin user interface, it's possible to accomplish via API command. We're going to see that in the product. It's in either the right-hand or left-hand side of the screens is the actual API command that you can copy and paste and execute outside of the user interface to accomplish what you're trying to do. And we also have a fully documented open API spec that runs alongside your instance so that you can go and play around with every single API route that's available. So that's kind of right-hand side of the screen. And if we look over to the left-hand side of the screen here, we can start talking about some of the connected applications that we might be using features and feature toggles inside of. So whether it's a front-end, more client-side SDK or application, or a server-side SDK application, Unleash is going to be able to have an SDK available to you in our umbrella of managed SDKs or some of the community supported SDKs. And we also have the option to go and build your own SDK if needed. And that's how a lot of our SDKs do start out for the more obscure programming languages. The more simple implementation always is the server side. So server side SDKs are going to connect to the client API, where client-side SDKs are going to connect to the front-end API. And the big difference between the client and front-end APIs or endpoints is that the front-end endpoint is going to use query string parameters provided to it from your front-end application to make the toggle configuration only contain feature toggles that are evaluated to true for that particular user. So what that means is that we're not going and sending every single toggle that's scoped to that particular API token back to the front end. We want to keep it as small as possible. We're on the server side, that doesn't matter as much. So we're able to go and send all that information over to server side SDKs. So there's always the option to connect either the client-side and server-side SDKs directly to your Unleash API in your Unleash instance, whether we're hosting it or you're hosting it yourself. However, if you are an enterprise and you're looking to really service potentially thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of requests per second, that's where we're going to start talking about implementing the Unleash Edge. This Unleash Edge is a super interesting product. It's a totally free product that works across all of our products, our open source, professional, and enterprise plans. This Edge is going to work with each one of those products, and it's completely free. You run it in your own infrastructure. It runs as a Docker container, and it's able to facilitate hundreds of thousands of requests per second. So that's where we can start to run edges in different regions and facilitate some of those regionality use cases. And think of it also as just basically a read replica of your toggle configuration in your API anywhere you need it to go in a very fast and performant manner. It's built in the Rust toolchain, so it's designed for performance and scalability. So excited to talk to you individually about some of your potential use cases for the Unleash Edge. And we're actually going to see how easy it is to run on my computer in my local Docker desktop. So that is kind of the whole picture here. And the one thing you might notice is that when you do run your Unleash Edge and you're connecting your applications, you are inside of this green rectangle here that is supposed to connote privacy, a privacy rectangle. And so this is where your applications are completely insulated from anything Unleash might see as a third-party provider. So we always recommend running that Unleash Edge product yourself, because it means that Unleash can never see any of those requests that are coming in. And that's why some of your sales executives will just ask you questions around how many folks are actually logging into the product and making changes to toggle configuration, instead of how many active users are you operating with, or how many different connections and applications are you connecting up to your API. Those are conversations that don't really exist here at Unleash. Instead, we're just focused on how many developers at your company are actually going and making changes to feature toggles and using the product on a daily basis. So that's the architecture overview. Everywhere else inside the documentation, specifically this Unleash concepts, is going to be a great place to go and read about some of the concepts that might come up through the demo here. You might hear activation strategies. You might hear different flag types, all these different topics that come up. It's always beneficial to go and read and see inside of the documentation the more detailed explanations. One thing I want to hit on really quickly is some of the developer guides and best practices that we have provided. Being the leader in the open source division of feature management means that we have to have a voice about the best practices in the industry. So we do have great stuff on the best practices around implementing Unleash and how we actually build it ourselves, and some of the tenets that we stand by when it comes to building a robust feature toggle operation, as well as actually implementing it. And so there's all types of tutorials and guides here, best practices on implementing Unleash that I absolutely encourage you to go and check out in some of your free time. The last place in the documentation I'd like to navigate before we actually dive into a product demo is our SDK section. So we do divide our SDKs into server-side, client-side buckets. So for example, the client-side SDKs that we're going to be working with today is the React SDK. And so that means that we would go and use the most popular package managers for that programming language to bring in that SDK into my application. So in this particular case, I'm using NPM, Node Package Manager, to install the Unleash SDK into that application. And then providing, you go to either our documentation or our GitHub pages. I always recommend heading over to those GitHub pages because it's kind of fun to see and interact with our developers on our end in GitHub. But we're going to provide you the boilerplate code for getting a SDK set up and initialized. You're just providing its URL, its client key, and then actually going and placing that if statement inside your application to go and check, hey, is this feature enabled? Great. If it's not, I'm not going to show it. So you're rendering one component or another. And then, of course, similar to using the just Boolean value of true, false, whether that feature toggle is enabled or disabled, we also have the opportunity to provide our applications variants. And so being able to send and set up variants from inside of Unleash and send those to connected applications means that you can kind of control those experiments from outside your applications without any redeployments or anything like that. and also use the stickiness of a feature toggle evaluation as well as a variant evaluation to make sure that the experience is not flickering. So if I were to deliver a green variant, for example, to one user, they're not going to switch to a blue variant the next time they come back to the resource. We can ensure that we're having the same experience across multiple sessions. So that is the SDK aspect. And then, I do like to head back really quickly to that original diagram that we walked through on the first part here, where we can just go and look at how I have my computer set up to reflect what's being shown here in this image. So I'm going to be operating as both a developer and an end user interacting with a demo application. So starting out on, that end user side of things, I'm, going to be working with a client side SDK. So I'm going to be working with the React SDK connected to a React application. So on my computer in Visual Studio Code, I do have my React application, just a template, a React template running here. So I've provided it a location to go and get the feature toggles, a client key, and provide some custom properties as well. And I'm actually connecting this application. It's running, and I can actually go and click into and see it running on my local 3030 here. We can see my demo application. So that's what I have operating here. And then I'm going to actually go and connect that up to an Unleash Edge that's running on my computer as well. So if I were to take a look at my Docker desktop here, I've gone and searched for Unleash. And when I search for Unleash, I can go and find my Unleash organization and the latest Edge version and run that on my computer. So that's what's currently running on my computer in terms of my application and my Edge that's connected to an upstream URL that is a SaaS hosted Unleash instance. So this is the first time that we're going to see some of the enterprise functionality available. So I can log into my Unleash instance using SSO. And that's super powerful because it means that I don't have to remember any username and passwords to log into my instance. I don't have to try to deprovision a user quickly if they were to leave my organization voluntarily or involuntarily. It all happens automatically with SSO. So we do support OpenID Connect, SAML 2.0, or SCIM. So however you're connecting up your identity providers, we're going to have a solution for you. And one really neat thing about Unleash Enterprise means that, yes, you have SSO, but you can also sync up groups from your SSO provider. So say you're using Azure Active Directory and you have groups that are denoted as your admin groups or your customer success team, developer QA, dev managers, release engineers, whatever it might be. Those folks can automatically be part of the groups that you have set up inside of your Unleash instance already. So when you're bringing those individuals and they're new to the team, they're automatically going to have access to everything that they need inside of Unleash, which is very beneficial. It saves you a lot of time as administrators. You don't have to try to individually manage folks. You can do it on a group level. So group syncing is very powerful. We've seen a lot of really positive feedback from adding this into the product. It helps a lot. But obviously, we're going to be spending some time together actually working with feature toggles for this particular demo. And I want to show you just how easy it is to create a feature toggle. So, in my particular instance here, I do have, what do I have? I have probably around, I don't see it just because there's some stuff over on my screen here, but I have probably around 150 feature toggles. And creating a new feature toggle just means that I go and click on that create button and I would give it a name like featured_app. And I did this on purpose because I have already created the feature toggle with this particular name in this instance. And I do get an exception from the product here that says, hey, Nick, a flag with this name already exists. Please come up with a different one. And that's on purpose because the name of the feature toggle is its unique identifier inside of Unleash. So when I go and search for those feature toggles, I do go and find them by their name. So that's how I would go and actually find it. And this is the first time we're going to see these API commands in either the right-hand or left-hand side of the screen. And we really do put these in your face to try to make it very apparent that you are able to do everything from inside the product, outside of it, with your other third-party provider, or however you're actually making these API commands. And so that is something that you'll see throughout the product. And I also want to spend some time really quickly showing you some of our open API spec that we have on each one of your instances. So when we go and provide you a SaaS instance, we do turn this environment variable on so that this is available, at your URL for your instance, and then docs open API. And this is every single API endpoint that's available to the Unleash UI. You can see it here. So this means that if you were to, try to make some type of integration, you can always go and accomplish that with a really nice intuitive open API spec here. And I really appreciate this because, it's sometimes hard to work with companies that don't have a well-documented API, but you can even see some of the deprecated routes that are available here. So it's just a nice one place to go and get all of the endpoints available. You can even export these into a collection and use it in something like Postman or Insomnia if you'd like. But heading back here to my instance, I'm not going to create this feature toggle because I already have it created. I can go and search for it. And this is a good opportunity to show you some of the interesting filters that you can add to be able to search. If you have thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of feature toggles in your instance, you can go and search for different parameters that you're looking for. So I already have this featured underscore app created. When I go and make that feature toggle, this is the page that I would land on, and this is where I can see all of the environments that are available to me. That's very much an enterprise only feature, is being able to have an unlimited amount of environments. And you notice I have default, development, sandbox, UAT, and production. I'm just shown here for this particular feature toggle in that project. But I can also go and create as many of these different environments as I want. So, I can make a copy of production and use it in a short-lived ephemeral type manner and delete it when I'm done. Or, if I'm a local or if I'm a developer working with local environment, I can do the same thing as well. So please take advantage of the fact that you have an unlimited amount of environments here with Enterprise, and it really helps when it comes to working in a large organization. Folks can really start to organize their environments as they see fit. But heading back to my page here, what we're going to be doing is actually building an activation strategy. So a feature toggle is just a database entry at this point until we go and add a activation strategy that gives it a brain. Where we want to give it some direction and say, hey, you're ready to go and you're turned on for these particular users, or you're shut off, or you're going to be turned on in a particular amount of time. So this is where we can really start to add some of the logic behind a feature toggle. So adding an activation strategy is really straightforward. I can just go and use a default activation strategy, which is just our gradual rollout strategy set to 100%. So this is a super common activation strategy that a lot of our users use, is that gradual rollout aspect. It means that you can go and set a feature to only be released to 5% of your user base and then grow it out to eventually 100% when you're confident that it's not causing any issues in your application. So really powerful way to be able to grow out your strategy here, but I'm just going to set it to 100% so that I can very much be sure that I'm going to get this feature when I go and turn it on. So I will open up my Unleash instance in a particular panel here, and then I'm also going to open up my demo application in another panel so that we can see this feature actually show up in my screen when I go and turn it on here. So I'm going to turn on the activation strategy in the default environment. And once that pooling interval comes into play, so my application is constantly pooling against the edge and the upstream URLs saying, hey, is there any new feature toggle available to me? And once that happens, that feature shows up here in the right-hand side of the screen. So this feature was powered and turned on by Unleash. Same thing happens when I go and turn it off. That feature is going to go away eventually once that refresh interval comes back into fruition and that feature is removed. So that's the big firework when it comes to feature management as you're evaluating potentially other providers. This is exactly what we're doing here in the industry is using a separate system to operate our applications at runtime and not require any redeployments. And it means that I can decouple releasing from deploying, all the good kind of buzzwords that you hear in the industry. But let's break it down and see how Unleash really separates ourselves from the pack when it comes to privacy, as well as being able to target some of the users on specific fields. So I'm going to click into my activation strategy here and make some edits. I'm going to go over to my targeting rules and add some constraints. And constraints are a little bit of a harsh word, but please don't think of them that way. Just think of them as kind of a way to target your users based off of attributes that you know about them in your applications. So inside of my application, I might know things about my user, like where they're coming from or a particular identifier. And this is all hard coded in in my application. It would not be, obviously in yours. You do it in a lot better way. But I just do this for demo's sake, that I can go and provide a membership or an organizational ID or whatever it might be, in terms of attributes that I'm looking to target on. And then I can go and start to create context fields. So I can create a context field like, Nick demo 123, and start to provide legal values. Like this is, let's say, well, it's coming in at branch A, for example. And then we might have another value of branch B, and then we'll add another one of branch C. So these are my branches that I might be a bank that I'm looking to target my users on. And then I can go back to my feature toggle and actually go and find those constraints that I just added. So I can go and look for my context field of Nick demo 123 and find branch A, branch B. I didn't save branch C by accident there, but it would be if I had clicked save correctly. So I can just go and select branch A. So that means that only the folks that are coming in with the attribute of branch A are going to get this feature toggle. And then when I start to add multiple constraints on my activation strategy, that's where and operators come into play. So I might have my branch, and I only want to release this to folks that are coming in at branch A and are gold tier members. So I can do that, save that up, and then I can add even more constraints here with context fields. And then I can really start to get powerful with some of the operators that are available to me here. So I can go and say, well, I want this to be in or not in this particular list, or I can start to add string starts with, contains these particular characters. I can do some number evaluations, great for interest rates, bank account values, could be the amount of whatever it might be. You can do some number greater than, less than, or equal to. Also, semver operators are available here. So, say you have this brand new feature and it's only available to folks that are coming in with the newer version of your application. You can, restrict that feature to only show when the application version is above or at a particular version. So really powerful aspect there. And then kind of a hidden gem is the ability to go and send current time and then do some scheduling. So this means that we can either release or sunset features after a particular date and time. So I'm sitting over here in Denver, Colorado, and I can go and use my local time zone here to release a feature after or before, maybe a downtime in my application. So once I save that, I now have really robust activation strategy with just a few clicks. I also have the ability to send some variants. So I can go and say, well, I want 50% of my users to get a blue variant. I can send it as a string. I can send it as a JSON object, as well as a CSV or a number. I always do string just because it's easier. I don't have to go and try to deal with any curly brackets or anything like that. I can add additional variants to have that 50-50 split and save that up. So now, with just a few clicks, I've created a really powerful activation strategy that's going to also deliver two different variants to my users depending on the random probability when they're being evaluated. Some of them might get blue, some of them might get green. And then, of course, I always have the opportunity to layer additional activation strategies on top of each other. And at this point, you might say, well, Nick, what's the point of having multiple activation strategies? It seems like you're targeting some users based off of constraints here with branch A, gold, and after a particular date and time, but everyone else is going to get this other 100%. And it seems like this one's kind of a moot point at this juncture. And so, yes, that's true, but just for demo's sake, we can potentially send a variant as well. Maybe I want to send a catch-all variant to everyone else that doesn't satisfy those particular values. So I can send something like red. Everyone else that's not, from branch A or a gold tier member after that particular time. At this point, I've created a really powerful activation strategy that gives me a lot of opportunity to target my users, and I'm happy with it. And I can easily go and copy this activation strategy from that default environment as I start to move this feature up the development lifecycle. So that is building activation strategies, actually, getting to play around with them and showing you that with just a few clicks, we're able to make a really powerful targeting rule for some of our users coming to our application. And I want to show you now some of the other functionality and features that we have on a feature toggle page. The first being metrics. Metrics are really neat because it gives me a purview into just basically the heartbeat of the feature toggle evaluations over the past 90 days, up to 90 days with the Unleash Enterprise product. We can save this for 90 days on every single environment level. So you can see all the different demos that I've been doing over time here. And it just tells you, how has this feature been exposed and potentially which variants. And that's it. You don't show you any other information about your users or anything like that. We do give you the opportunity to pass that data from your application. Say you want to know that Nick is coming from Denver and you saw this feature with this particular variant, and then you want to be able to correlate that to other potential metrics to measure some type of conversion. We obviously will let you do that with impression data. However, that data just lives in your application and is sent to that analytics provider that you're already using. We're not trying to sell ourselves as an experimentation platform or an additional analytics provider. Use that analytics provider that you already are invested in, that your data analysts, scientists, and engineers are already comfortable with, and move the data that's produced from your feature toggle provider to where it needs to go. So this is our metrics page here. And then we also have just an event log that does store all the changes that I've made to this particular feature toggle over time. So we can see all the changes. You can see exactly who made those changes, and this is on the feature toggle level. So this is for this particular feature toggle, but we also have a global event log that's has every single change across the entire organization in the instance, and we also have project event logs as well. It's a good point in the demo to talk about some of the data that we're producing inside of Unleash. So turning a feature toggle on, or even, and we'll see it in just a second, submitting a change request. These are all things that happen inside of Unleash that you might want to inform other systems about. And that's where our integration page come into play. So we do have a whole bunch of integrations available here. We have the ability to go and send events to just Datadog, Microsoft Teams, New Relic, Slack app, webhook. We do have an interesting signals and actions product offering here where you might go and hit a listener endpoint inside of Unleash and then go and do an action inside of Unleash as well. So Jira, if that's something that you've been using. But the generic webhook will be able to facilitate any type of integration. It just means that you can go and send events like, hey, this particular feature was updated or a change request was submitted. And you can even scope that on an environment and project level so that you're not just, kind of cluttering up a Slack app or integration with, all types of signals. You can really separate the signal from the noise and make sure that you're, only updating what you need to. So the integrations aspect is super powerful to inform other systems about happenings inside of Unleash. But at this point, I like to talk about, we have an entire organization with a whole bunch of feature toggles. How do we start to organize that into a way that makes sense? And that's where projects come into play. So projects give us a nice way to organize feature toggles that are alike in some way. That's the basic definition of a project, and we try to keep it pretty loose so that folks don't say, well, it's an application or a team. It can be really anything that you want. It's just feature toggles that are alike in some way. So when they are alike in some way, we start to organize them into a project, and then we automatically have some powers granted to us. And the first things is permissions. And so when I have feature toggles inside of a project, I can start to assign permissions to this particular project and the feature toggles inside of it. And importantly, only a feature toggle or a single feature toggle can only live in one project at a time. So I can't have one feature toggle live in every single project because you wouldn't be able to assign permissions on that particular feature toggle. When it lives in that project, it automatically assumes the permission set from that project, and it means that I can go and grant access to folks or entire teams to this particular project. So I can go and say, well, I want to give access to an entire group like the customer success team, or I want to give access to an individual like Ivar, who is our CTO here at Unleash. I can go and give him access as a owner, member, or any custom project role that I might want to create. And this is going to get really exciting because it means that I can go and create custom project roles that are very specific to my needs. So Ivar is the CTO here at Unleash, so I might give him every single access that's available to give to him. Or maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's a junior level developer. They're just starting out here, so they only want to give them specific permissions to do certain things inside the product, as well as only give them access to certain environments so that they can't go and make major changes to a production environment, for example. So the custom project roles really give me the ability to hone in access on a group and individual level. And if I head back to my project, I can start to give access and feel really comfortable about the folks that are entering inside my project and make sure that they can do the right things and make it really hard for them to do the wrong things. But you'll also notice that I can very easily go and turn this feature toggle on and off in my default environment. But when I try to do the same thing in production, I am greeted by a change request. So I have to go and submit this change request so that someone else in my organization is going to be notified, whether it's in the product or through a third-party integration. Maybe they're log into Slack and see that, change request is pending and I need to go and make that change. And the reason why I'm greeted by that is because I do have change requests set up for my production environment. I currently have one approver necessary, but I could set up to 10 approvers for a particular change. So that means that 20 eyeballs have to go and sign off on a particular change in order for it to go into production. But when that change happens, someone would come in here with the appropriate access and see that, Nick, is making a change here, and maybe he didn't think of things all the way through, and I'm going to reject it, and I'm going to give it a particular reason as to why. Or I might go and approve that change and say, yeah, Nick, that's good to go. Nice work. I'm going to change it right now, and it's going to be implemented right away. Or I can schedule that change to happen in the future. So this is another place where we allow you to schedule some changes into the future. So I'm going to cancel this just so that we don't have any lingering change requests happening here. And I want to spend some time talking about some of the other interesting things that come out of feature toggles inside of a project. One really key aspect is the ability to go and start to do some parent-child relationships between feature toggles when they're inside of a project. Flag dependencies, hierarchies are all synonyms here. It gives you the ability to go and say, well, I need this feature toggle to be turned on in order for the other feature toggles that are childs or children of that feature toggle in order to work. So some hierarchies and dependencies are possible with projects. And we can also drive some really interesting insights when feature toggles are inside of a project together. You can see some of the total changes, the average time to production for a particular feature. You can also see the project health. So, importantly, we are a third-party provider that's advocating you to add references to, us in your applications, and that's accumulating your technical debt. You're adding references to a third-party provider. That's technical debt. We want to give you some, page per view project health dashboard to be able to tell you, hey, at a certain point, it's time to remove these feature toggles from your application so that your project managers and your feature release managers can adequately remove feature toggle references once that feature becomes established in your application. We're going to tell you about when feature toggles are becoming stale or potentially becoming stale, and that's all time-based. So you're able to go and set these different time values, and you can set it to 8 days up to, this feature toggle is never going to expire. I should say you can set it to 1 day to kind of in perpetuity. And that varies depending on the feature toggle type. We've defined 5 distinct categories of feature toggles. So, operational, short-lived feature toggles that might be, moving from one version to another. Release is your typical feature toggle. And then an experiment is just a release with experimentation attached to it. And then kill switches and permission feature toggles are going to be, kind of designed to live in perpetuity in your applications. So Unleash is never going to notify you about those changes to be removed. So that's, kind of a lot of the different things that I'd like to show you today. Me and your account executive have a vested interest in making sure that you're very comfortable with the product, and we're very happy to provide trials and help you out with a POC. So please get in touch with your account executive as well as myself to enable a trial like that. We're happy to provide it. We want to make sure that you're feeling really confident with some of the software that you're buying here. We also have, just all types of cool things like our playground where you can go and try out toggle configurations without an actual application, and all types of nooks and crannies of the product here that we're really eager to show you in the future. So thanks for taking some time to walk through this demo today. I'm happy to meet with you guys on a one-off basis here if there's any specific questions, but it's been great. Thank you for your time today.